Okay, so today we're changing the brake pads and rotor on a 2010 Mazda cx-9. The front, we're going to be doing the driver's side, but both sides are identical. You're going to have 21mm nuts. So first you're going to want to break those nuts free. I'm using a breaker bar, half inch with a half inch 21mm. Break those free. Try not to scuff up the wheels. Once you have that loosened, then you're going to match up your jack to the metal underneath here. And with this car, there's not really enough room on this side to also put a jack stand. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put it under there, and you can right in that area. So I'm going to go ahead and jack it up. Just want it till it gets off the ground. And that's a pretty sturdy piece right under there, so if your jack does give out, that'll stop it. So once you have your jack stand under there and all that ready, you're going to start by taking off your lug nuts. The easiest way is to take the bottom ones off first. I usually use my impacts for this, impact guns, but I don't have my large one with me today. Make sure to keep all your bolts and nuts together. Because then it's easier to keep track of them. Alright, so the last one will be the top. Sometimes the wheel will angle out and make it hard. So you just want to put your foot down there, kind of hold the wheel in. And once you have this off, put these to the side. Take your wheel off. Some people like to put this under the car in case it falls, but it's really not gonna fall with the extra jack stand on it. Push it over there. Sometimes you can sit on the wheel for a comfortable working area, but I got this chair here. Okay, so the first bolts we're going to take out are the sliding caliper bolts. There's one here. There's one down there. Make sure you get it good on the camera, John. And what I'm using is the impact gun. This is specifically a Matco 3/8 drive. 300 foot-pounds, so it should break through it pretty well. 17mm. So if this doesn't take these off, that means these are really on there. So I'm going to start with the top one. Make sure it's on there all the way, nice and firm, 17mm. Right, it's not moving the top one. Check if the bottom one will move. Alright, so that pick's not going to help us today. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna use a 1/2 inch 17mm with the breaker bar. And I think what I'm gonna do is angle it out a bit where I can get an extension on that. Make sure you don't angle the force out too much. This is off of a jack. The arm off of it. I'm gonna use that. But I am not sure I'm gonna be able to get any room. There we go. Got it loose. And you always want to use an extension if it's hard. You don't want to tire yourself out. And be very careful when you're applying pressure on these. Because if you pull on it really hard, you can move the car and the car can fall. So, the only way to get to it for the bottom one is this leg. So I'm going to gently move it so it doesn't move the car. Just like that. So once you get them loose, you can take them off with a ratchet, but I'm going to use my impact. Save time. And because it's easier. Okay. Sometimes they're rusty inside. These are what's called sliding. It's had some rust on it, so you can expect down in there it's going to be rusty. You can see where all the lubrication that was on it moved all the way to the tip. So that showed rust was expanding and pushing it back. So in other words, when you clean this bolt off and then lubricate it, just like we would lubricate the brake pads. Next one we'll take off is the smaller one. There we go. And what I can tell by these is the one at the bottom is skinnier, thinner, than the one at the top. So remember that when you're putting them in. We'll get back to those guys in a bit. Let's go ahead and break apart the caliper bracket. We're going to take this caliper off for more room. Be very gentle not to apply any pressure on this hose. You can rip it and you can tear it very easily. Don't drop it. You should probably use a string, but I've done this so many times. I just fit it right there and it doesn't bother. Alright, so from what I can remember from last time, it's a 19mm. Let's see if it fits. Yes, so 19mm in the inside. My impact swivels don't go up to 19, so we'll just be using the 1/2 inch ratchet and breaker bar for the rest of this. So 19mm, set the 17mm side, 19mm on, and John, if you can get the back here to show where these are, bring it back more. Alright, so there's one up here. And then there's one down there. This right here. We're going to break this loose. And if it is hard with your breaker bar, do use an extension. Don't wear yourself out. And they are pretty difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and use the extension. I had to apply about 40 pounds even with the 4 feet extension. So we got about 160 foot-pounds on it, which is a good amount for these bolts. I'm still not wanting to move too much without the extension, which shows a lot of rust buildup. Alright, so once you get one side loose a bit, I'm going to go ahead and go to the top. And the camera's about to run out of battery, so I'm not sure how long it's going to last. Okay, so now we're going to use our ratchet. It swivels faster. Make sure you're going to the left. This is an older one. Still use it because it works. But the head sometimes is difficult to twist. There we go. Kind of rotate back and forth. So not too much pressure is on one side. Now they're pretty loose, so I'm going to try to take them off with my hands. Make sure you do wear gloves, because this grease and dirt can get into your skin. Too much of that isn't good for you. 5mm or 7mm gloves are usually good. Like you saw earlier, an impact is much faster if you're going to get into car repair or you just want to save some time. Impact is definitely a good investment, preferably battery charge. You can use it anywhere. I typically use Matco and DeWalt. Alright, so we got this bracket almost off. Okay, finally got it off. Take these brake pads off. And you can see these are completely shot, so we know it's going to be an issue getting those pistons pushed in, because they are ejected too far out. I'm going to go ahead and rub off all this dirt with just by hand. Doesn't have to be super clean, because once you put it right back on there, it's going to get dirty. You do, however, want to lubricate these very well. Don't be stingy with the grease. If they fall off, they'll clip back in. I tend to keep the old ones on there just because they're made much better than a lot of the newer ones. Clip in a lot better too. Alright, a little bit one again. I'm using what's called brake grease. I usually just buy a bigger bottle like this with a brush on it. Much easier than little packets. And you really don't have to buy any for quite a while. Alright, so get that one off. And this one's in really good shape. Really, really good shape. But these are new. We're gonna put the new one on. The guy wanted the new ones installed. Cut off any rust buildup. It looks rusty, but it's really clean. It's hard to see on the camera, but we're not going to really have to do anything to it. You saw how easy the old one came off. The main issue was just the brake pads. Okay, so now we're going to install the caliper bracket. So you're going to make sure you put it on right. It's going to slide over it with the half circle moon crescent shape like that. You gotta get your bolts. I typically put a little grease in, especially if they're your own car. You don't want to be taking off rusty bolts next time. You have a chance of breaking. These were already on too hard. Okay. So I typically start with the bottom one, so I can use as a pivot point for the top. Okay, we got that one started. Now I'm going to install the top bolt. Hey John, make sure you're getting a good view of it, if you could. Alright, so we're just going to hand screw them on for a bit. Once they get too difficult, then we can switch over to the ratchet. And these do need to be pretty tight on there, not super tight as it was before. A lot of people like to use a torque ratchet to get the specific torque pounds, but we don't really need to do that. As long as you got it on there nice and firm, it's going to stay on. Alright, let's switch over. Alright, finally got it tightened. Be careful with the caliper that it doesn't fall. Make sure you have it tied to something. Try to get a better view of that, John. Thank you. Alright, now we're going to give it a really good turn. I'll put about 60 pounds on it, just from experience. 60 pounds on that one. Now we are going to push down the brake. The pistons, these, I can tell you, just from experience, that these are going to be a bit difficult because of just because of how far they were sticking out with the shot. Okay, and you want to make sure there's nothing on this side. I'm going to use a C-clamp just for illustration. I also do have a brake set I can show you over here. This is typically what a lot of mechanic shops will use, so they can use it on ratcheting caliper heads, which you'll find in smaller cars in the rear. But this is what you'll be using if you just do this on your own cars, is a good C-clamp. And these do have holes in them, so you want a piece of metal to catch the sides of it. And I'm having to turn this pretty hard, so this was pretty rusty. Okay, let's get it in. Do be gentle with it, you don't want to tear your rubber. Okay.
It's going pretty easy, man.
Alright, we got it pressed back. Now this is ready to install. Now we're going to get our brake pads. I'm going to lubricate these. Here's your new brake pads. Just be sure yours are the right size. Sometimes the shops or internet businesses will give you the wrong size. Make sure you get good quality ones. You want to apply grease here for your piston heads. Also helps prevent rub on that. I just dump a lot on there. It's better that than rust in the future. A lot of people just put a little bit, but that rust can really take over quick, especially if you live in the northern state. So don't be lenient. That grease will be your best friend in the future. It's hard to see down in here. There we go. Make sure it's nice and snug. Make sure your line right here isn't twisted. Next, I think what we're going to do is lubricate these bolts. Make sure nice and soft, because these do a lot of moving every time you engage and disengage your brake. These are sliding. So get all the joints and everything all the way to the tip. There we go. And then we're going to fit these in here. Put the large ones on top. Kind of gently slide it. Lubricate that rubber so it's easy to line up. You got your thinner one down here. Slide it in really slowly. You want to get it nice and soft. These were hard to pull out earlier, which means there was some debris and rust. Okay, you got your... Okay, here's the large one. I'm going to gently move it until it slides very easily in there. You don't want to put any wear on those rubber boots, because then you'll have to replace them next time. Alright, now I'm going to finish it with the impact. I'm going to take my glove off. Don't get too much rust on it, or grease on the impact handle. Now you will need to hand tighten it. I've used this quite a bit, so give it about 20-30% of pressure. That doesn't need a lot. Okay, so there's your brake job. We're going to go ahead and throw the wheel on, and we're finished. We went from no brakes to a lot of brakes. Okay, so now it's time to put the wheel on, after making sure all our bolts are on there very tight and aligned well. Now we're going to put our lug nuts back on. Alright, after checking all the bolts, I'm going to slide the wheel back on. It's pretty dark in here. That is a method of lifting it up. Line it on if you don't have a strong back or bad shoulders, but are too shallow to the ground to use that method. So I'm just going to lift it up. Alright, hold it with one arm, and you're going to want to put a nut at the top so it stays on. You're going to want to press down on the bottom like that. And screw it down a bit. Now your wheel stays on. It's not going to fall off while the holes are lined up. I'll screw this side up a bit. This side. There you go. Now the quicker way to spin it, and the more convenient way, is once you have your 21mm socket. There we go. Put it on your breaker. You can spin it just like that with both arms. If you do it for a while, you can get really good at it. You can use the top as a part to grip with your hands, and just go back and forth. Give them a few turns each so the wheel goes back on straight without putting too much pressure on one lug nut when you're screwing them on. Give them a little tighten back and forth. Sometimes the wheel can go cockeyed and unbalanced. It happens more than you think. Even some shops will screw up on stuff like this. So you just want to take your time, See how easy they are to turn. You want to make sure they're pretty snug, so when you put all the weight back on, it doesn't rub into the threads or break a lug. And so like that. Now you're going to get your jack, stand under here, and some of you might not have liked that I put it under there, but it's a solid part of the car and there's no more room for it on the side, too much plastic, so it would have done its job. Now we're going to gently lower the car, just give it a little that. Now we're going to tighten up the lug nuts, which is one of the most important parts of the job. And these don't need to be super torqued, so there's 5 of them. Some shops will use their impact guns and put these on so tight that they almost melt the threads. Always go cross pattern, opposite sides. It's very important. And alright, there you go. There's your brake job. We're going to clean the wheel because we've got some grease on it, but that's how you change your brake pads and rotors on a 2010 Mazda cx-9.